a lot of people think that, getting email subscribers, getting SMS phone numbers is building community. And that's not true. That's definitely one piece of the puzzle. And that piece of the puzzle, of course, is...
Hey, my name is Felix Tia, and I'm the host of Shopify Masters, a weekly podcast powered by Shopify, the easiest way to sell online, in person, and anywhere in between. Each week, we invite entrepreneurs like you to share what they've learned growing successful e-commerce businesses. In this episode, you'll learn how they built a private community of thousands of people ever before launching their products, the six-figure inventory setback that almost ended their business, and the dangers of catering content too much towards your demographic. Before our show, I wanted to chat about the Storefront Signage Maker. It's an easy way for any brick and mortar shop owner to let your customers know that you are open, available for curbside pickup, delivery, online information, and more. Customize any message you like, automatically create a QR code for your store, then print it off from home. It's easy and simple to use, no design experience required. Create a sign yourself at shopify.com/signage. Today I'm joined by Kay Lee and Kay Chan from Emmy. Emmy is the world's first low-carb, high-protein, 100% plant-based instant ramen and was started in 2019 and based out of San Francisco, California. Welcome, Kay Lee and Kay Chan.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so the idea behind the business, behind the products, all came from health issues that you were seeing in your families. Tell us more about what you were seeing and how it led you down this path of starting Emmy.
Definitely. This is Kaylee. So Keishan and I both grew up in Asian food families. My grandparents are produce farmers in Taiwan, where they grow something called a rose apple.
And my grandmother, she actually owned a hawker noodle stall out in Thailand for 40 years, and my dad ended up opening a noodle shop down in LA. So definitely both food family based.
Yeah, and both of our parents ended up immigrating to the U.S. actually, so we wouldn't be in the food industry, which is pretty ironic. But over the past few years, Keichin and I, as we've gotten older and as our families have gotten older, we've seen them suffer through chronic health conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure. And so a few years ago, we started chatting about what a better for you food brand would look like to help address some of those issues. And since we had grown up in Asian food families, it kind of became a natural extension for us to start thinking about the Asian food space and why there wasn't a leading better for you brand. And that's kind of how the genesis started.
Yeah, and you mentioned that your families had the background in the food industry. Like, what were you both like person? Did you also have the expertise to begin just making, building a food company?
So Keichin and I actually, we spent the past decade in the tech industry. And part of this, again, was, our families kind of immigrated here and didn't want us to necessarily grow up working in the food industry. But Keichin and I actually met 10 years ago at a mobile gaming company. We were both product managers there. And we were like the only two PMs who would go get noodles for breakfast together. So that was actually how we bonded and got to know each other. And we did take slightly different career paths. So after that experience, I did stay in product management for a little longer at an education tech company. But then shortly after, I moved into early stage venture capital, investing mostly in like very, very early, usually when it's just like two founders in a garage, in consumer tech, some software. And then most recently was leading food and beverage investing at a firm called Pear Ventures. And I'll let Kei-Chan cover his background.
Yeah. So similar to Kaylee, definitely did not have a background in food and was not equipped to move into food, but did have a lot of exposure in building consumer products. Spent the last decade at a variety of tech companies. Kaylee mentioned we worked at a mobile gaming company together. Later, I went to a healthcare startup called Amino, where we were trying to solve how to provide consumers with higher quality healthcare for lower cost. And then after that, went to a startup you may have heard of called Facebook, I guess now Meta, where I was leading product for the newly formed video creators team before, teaming up with Kaylee to work on Emmy.
Yeah, and it's actually really interesting because Keichin and I, we've often thought long and hard about our career journey and how we ended up where we are today. Keichin and I actually both started in the finance industry first, and then we both moved into mobile gaming. And it's interesting because I think after those experiences, which, but arguably maybe were a little bit more like perhaps finance or even just like personal driven, we both started caring a lot more about just working at mission driven companies. And that's one of the reasons why I went into education tech and K-Chan went to healthcare. But even at those companies, we kept thinking about scale and impact. And that's one of the reasons, I was like just a product manager on an app in a broader education tech company. K-Chan was working, as a product manager at a health tech company trying to address a huge healthcare problem. And so both of us then from there tried to go the opposite direction where we tried to work on scale. And so that's why I was in venture capital. I was thinking, the highest leverage thing I could be doing is investing in companies that are building good things for the world. And K-Chan was at Facebook trying to understand, how to impact millions of consumers at any given time. And I think after these experiences, we came to realize that, something that we could do that could blend both that mission and that scale was work on IMI, which, is kind of like our high leverage impact to the world where we can build a product that's healthier for the world, but at scale.
Yeah, and given your backgrounds, maybe not specific to the industry where you know how to make the products themselves, but your backgrounds, again, like you mentioned, wanting to work on and then eventually build a mission driven company, working on build and on operating at scale. How much of what the expertise that you had in completely different industries was overlapped or transferable to starting a brand new business?
Yeah, I could definitely comment on the product side. I think one of the unique things about building products in tech in particular is that you're expected to be wrong like a fairly significant number of times. But like the number one mantra is just move really fast, get products out to people and get feedback. So whether or not you're heading in the right direction. And so, we really took that to heart with IMI. And for us, it was about getting products spun up as fast as possible and getting it into the hands of real customers. And so, one of the things we did in the early days is we literally just made noodles in our own kitchen and went around town to various friends and family and just asked people to taste our product. In the early days, people were like, this is horrible. And so we're like, okay, well, let's cross shirataki off our list of ways we're going to make this product. And that's really how we landed on the product that we have today, which is a lot of trial and error and just moving as fast as possible and getting real customer feedback. So that was largely transferable. The coding bits and like the food manufacturing bits, like completely unrelated, but the higher level things were extremely valuable.
Oh, one other thing to add is Keichin and I also took I think we both have community building backgrounds in the sense of, previously I had also built the world's largest product management community when I was still working as a product manager. And Keichan, when he was at Facebook, he was really helping to build products that would help creators manage their communities. And so that definitely was kind of this meta layer that we wanted to bring into IMI, where even during our year of R&D, we actually built in public and built this community, this private community of thousands of people who, by the time we launched, were pretty fanatical about the product and wanted to evangelize it to others. And this community has really been kind of a beachhead cornerstone of like how we think about new product development or getting feedback on designs of our packaging, or even thinking about like the nutritionals of our product. So I think that is something we definitely brought from our previous experiences.
Yeah, I think community building and having a community is one of those assets that that are great to start building when you don't have many resources at hand, and it's kind of one of those assets that just keeps on giving, not just in the sense of getting customers, return customers, but also to your point about probably using them as like a sounding board or feedback and learning how to guide or direct your company from having this, again, sounding board. I think the concern, the question that some listeners might have is like, how do you do that? Like, what does it mean to build a community, especially from someone that maybe has never built a community before, that maybe has never considered starting a Facebook group even? Like, how do you even begin this process of building a community?
Yeah, I think the first thing to call out is, a lot of people think that, getting email subscribers getting SMS phone numbers is building community. And that's not true. That's definitely one piece of the puzzle. And that piece of the puzzle, of course, is like the acquisition side of getting people in. But a true community is very different from an audience in that a community, generally the members are engaged with each other, it's not just like a one-way relationship or even a two-way relationship between the brand and the audience. It's a three-way relationship where it's brand, audience, and then the audience speaking to other members of the audience. And I think for us, we were pretty deliberate in the early days of picking Facebook groups as our medium of our community because Keijin and I did a lot of demand testing before we even built the product. And in the early days, we kind of realized that our audience who was interested in this like low carb, high protein instant ramen tended to actually be like, for example, like a 35 to 65-year-old female. And we knew from our mobile gaming days, because we had to study a lot about customer demographics back then, that a lot of that core audience did live on Facebook and some on Instagram, but it was mostly on Facebook. And that's actually why we chose that medium to begin with. But once we figured that out, we would basically funnel, we would take people on our email list and like we had a drip sequence and all the calls to action were to join our Facebook group because we knew there we would have an opportunity to, again, build in public, share a lot of behind the scenes in a very non-transactional way, which I think sometimes email does feel transactional. And then in that community, people could also get to meet each other. So we would often like tag people on comments. We would talk to people one-on-one, get to know their interests, and then we would match them with other people. And now if you join our community, there's people posting new recipes, new like bowls, different ways that they've like prepared Imi. And we know how different people like to prepare it in different ways. So we're able to connect them to each other and they'll chat together in the threads.
Yeah, so you mentioned 35 to 60-year-old woman, and I'm going to take a stab here to say that's not the demographic. That's second nature for either of you maybe to talk to. It's not who you are. So how do you know how to create the content for a community that might not be representative of necessarily who you are?
So, Keijin, I hope you don't mind if I take this one. Go ahead. It's funny because in the early days, we definitely tried to cater to that audience where it was this older female audience that was also interested in health and wellness. And I think part of it was in the pre-launch phase, it was actually still, it doesn't matter who the audience is. Most of the time, they're going to be interested in behind the scenes where we would literally take photos of us like traveling to like a blender or like mixing things in our living room. I think that's always going to be interesting content. But post-launch, we actually had this moment where we were trying to cater a lot of our like organic channels to post like health tips, things that we thought this audience would resonate with. And it kind of got to a point where we just realized over time, this felt really inauthentic to who we were as founders and kind of our experiences growing up. And this is just kind of us being very vulnerable about what actually happened, where I think 3 months after we launched, we kind of looked at our content and we said, you know what, this is just not who we are. And we kind of just went back to our roots because Keijin and I grew up as Asian Americans in America. We had these unique experiences straddling both like our Asian heritage and our American upbringing. And we wanted to share a lot about those experiences, like the different like Asian food and the Asian culture we grew up with as these third culture kids. And so we really started reorienting a lot of our content, both to our community, to our audience. And I think that really just changed the direction of the business, where now it feels a lot more authentic. People still love our brand because they love following, us, our story as individuals and how we started this. So it's definitely felt a lot better now.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that felt like a risky decision to make, where you kind of have something that's already having traction but it doesn't feel authentic to you, and probably it doesn't feel as fulfilling because it's not as authentic. So also see the pull of wanting to return back to the kind of more authentic roots. Was it a hard decision? Like from the outside, the way you describe it sounds like it would have been a difficult decision if I were in your shoes to make that call.
In all honesty, it actually wasn't that difficult of a decision. I think there was always a part of us who thought that thought maybe we would alienate some customers, but when it came down to brass tacks, we also realized, the same type of people who would want to eat this product is also the same type of people who would be interested in this, in our stories. And so there was a lot of alignment there. And I think the thing with content and media these days, and given sort of the stage we were at, there's just so much information, and we were such a young company. We always knew that if the metrics got worse, or if people gave us feedback that it wasn't resonating, we could always pivot back. It wasn't one of those decisions that was intractable.
That makes sense. Yeah,
it's actually pretty fascinating, because to Kei-chan's point around like people who would want to eat this product would probably be interested in type of like more content or that was authentic to who we are. We've actually noticed when we do like user interviews and we talk with our customers, we ask them like, how did you hear about Emmy, or how did you discover Emmy? We're starting to see that a lot of them, it's almost like cool to be cultured these days, where there's obviously a lot of media around like Asian American culture. There's now TV shows where like, Squid Games is like number one, or there's like a lot more Korean dramas, or, we have the first Asian, Marvel superhero. And we see a lot of our non-Asian customers actually saying like, yeah, actually I was, watching this Korean drama on Netflix, and they were eating ramen in the show, and it got me curious because I'd never tried it. And so I went online, searched up like a healthier ramen, because obviously people don't want to eat like an unhealthy one. And then that's how I discovered Emmy. So it's there's a lot of macro tailwinds happening, but I think the audience, they are seeking this stuff out, and it allows us to be authentic and still appeal to them.
And one thing I'll also add is, Kaylee and I have been friends for a long time, and for us, we really made it a point to make sure we were always having fun with building Emmy. And the direction our content was going initially, when it was inauthentic, it really just it felt very draining, to be completely frank. And so like after we were like, screw it, let's just do what feels fun. It became a lot more enjoyable. And the authenticity and fun has come back into running this business. And we think that that's going to give us a lot more longevity as well.
It even ties to like our core Emmy mission, where, we want to create foods that basically embolden people to play by their own rules in life. And that's like very specific language, because like Kei-chan mentioned, we're very close friends. And we just wanted to have fun, like while building this. Obviously we're going to keep growing and going to be smart about building it. But we did this because, it was something we wanted to exist in the world, and people told us we couldn't be done, but we kind of just played around in our own kitchens, made sure that, we enjoyed the process, and that's kind of how it happened. And we think that everyone deserves, that chance to really just play by their own rules and still have fun along the way and be authentic to themselves.
Yeah, and I want to circle back to this idea of how important it is that you've discovered, both of you have discovered, about having fun in business, and why it's helped you guys. Before we get into that, though, I want to just kind of wrap up this idea of like community building. So you mentioned building in public was the kind of content that was working, that felt right to you. How else has your content morphed? And I encourage people to check out the Facebook community that you built, and we'll link to all that and everything. But give us a sneak peek. Like, what is it about your community that you feel is that you've created that allows it to be engaging?
There's a couple of things. I think that in the early days, it really felt more like a one-way conversation at first, where we were still in this like pre-launch phase. We didn't even have this product out, and people wanted to join because they wanted to follow our journey. And I think that's like a common thing you're going to see with most brand building today, is people want to be a part of this journey. They want to see what's going behind the scenes. They want to know that there's real people building this brand. So Kei-chan and I, when we started out, like, no joke, people are always like, oh, like, did you put a lot of thought into your content pillars and like have this whole content strategy? And no, we really didn't. Like, Kei-chan and I would get together. We'd be like sitting in our living room, and we'd be like, hey, why don't we take a photo of this like noodle bowl that we made for lunch, and like, let's just post it. Or when we were traveling together to go to like LA to meet with suppliers, we would go to like a noodle restaurant again, and we'd be like, hey, we just found this like really cool like udon place, like here's like a bowl and here's like a photo of the kitchen. So it really was just sharing like our life and how like we were taking steps in our life to like educate ourselves towards building this brand. And I think that obviously evolved when we launched, where as we got closer to launch, where we started doing a lot more polls. Like we would ask people, hey, just curious, like, what do you think about this iteration of packaging design? Would love any thoughts, any feedback. And then people kind of just got bought into the process where they felt like their opinion actually mattered. And it did matter because we took into account all of their feedback. We would structure like pretty comprehensive surveys. Luckily, because as previous PMs, we have some of that like UX experience. And so a lot of their feedback actually influenced the product. And I think when they see that happen, they get bought in even more.
And there's definitely something really important that Kaylee hit on there. He mentioned that in the early days, we were posting stuff into the channel. It was more or less just going into a void. It was just like us talking to each other in the Facebook group. But what happened over time was like we really created a safe space for us to just post dumb things that we thought were interesting. And now what you're seeing in the community is almost like this, because we set the precedent of like, creative expression in there. You get customers who are posting meme videos with Imi ramen. People are cooking Imi with weird things like elk steaks. The other day, someone made sushi rolls using Imi ramen. And then last week, this is probably a recipe that I got to go and try sometime. Someone made a ramen breakfast burrito and it looked delicious.
That's awesome. I definitely got to check out the Facebook group. I want to get some tips on how to spice all that up too. So as you're doing this though, I'd imagine, or maybe you haven't felt this, but I'd imagine that as the company's becoming more established, you might start feeling, okay, there's more at stake here now. We got to be more serious. We got to be more formalized. We got to be more serious. We got to try to pay attention to best practices. There's more at play here now. Is now responsible to only have fun. Did you feel that urge, and how do you balance that with this, what sounds like an innate need for both of you, and almost like an agreement that you both had to have fun when the company's becoming more established and again more at stake, and there's just a pull towards being more serious?
Yeah, I think a lot of brands feel this pressure. Frankly, even like individuals. A prime example is like if you go on Twitter, when someone is growing from the first 0 to like their first 10,000 followers, they're a lot more vulnerable, a lot more transparent. And then you notice this shift from like 10,000 to 100,000 followers where they just start to curate a lot further. And this is common with, most social platforms. That's why Facebook, like Instagram, they kind of became curated over time. I think Keichin and I, obviously we do have to think about this stuff. We have to present like a cohesive brand. We recently brought on co-creative directors to help with this, but that Facebook community is still really that safe space, like HN mentioned, where we can kind of be our goofy selves, and our goofy selves still blend through. Like if you look at our post-purchase emails, there's literally like GIFs of us like jumping and high-fiving each other and like throwing broth in the air as like a celebration. So there's always going to be opportunities for our authentic selves to shine through. We just need to spend some more time thinking about how to make that more cohesive across all of our channels is all.
So you had mentioned that when the community first starts, and I think this is a challenge, a point, like a point of obstacle for a lot of people to continue building community, is that at first it's just you, or in your case, you two, together in this Facebook group. And eventually as more people come in, there's still probably not much discussion going on amongst, because you had mentioned that there's the three kind of communications going on in a community. And one of them is from audience to audience. So you had mentioned that by being authentic, by being vulnerable, by just trying to have fun, that kind of set the standard set the kind of context for what kind of community you wanted to build. But were there other ways to encourage this kind of communication or engagement between members?
We did actually. So I think that a lot of times it's going to come down to just understanding. So a community ultimately is just made up of a bunch of individuals, right? And you have to get to know everyone on an individual level. At a certain scale, it's of course very, very difficult. But in the early days, like we got to know each one of these people. We treated as like they were extended team members in a way where we would get to know their interests. Like we have this long introduction thread where everyone who comes in introduces themselves, like where they're from, why they love ramen, and you kind of just get to know these people over time. There's this guy like Mike Nielsen in our group who makes he makes these awesome videos of Imi where it's kind of like the meme, very meme like, and it's really funny. But when you have multiple conversations with him in these threads, you just get to know him as a person over time. And so now I can always whenever I see some other community member mentioning something related to that, I'll be like, I'll just tag Mike and I'll be like, hey, I think you two would get along. And then they start talking to each other. Or we have another guy, John Henley, who loves making, he'll take Imi and he'll use them in different use cases. Like he makes trail mix out of Imi. And then we have another lady Barbara Chen, who Kei Chen mentioned. She actually makes sushi using Imi, instead of rice. She uses our noodles. And so John and Barbara, we know, like to think very creatively. They like to use make Imi in different ways. So we'll just pair them. We'll be like, hey, you two should chat because you guys are coming up with these really interesting creative recipes. So I'm sure you guys could riff off of each other.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. You get to know your community, get to know the members first, and then because you two have been there from the beginning and are most invested in it, you know them better than anyone. And then your job from there on is just to introduce people to each other. Is that the recipe behind all of this?
Yeah, and there's more sophisticated ways too. When I used to run my product management community, I actually had a spreadsheet where I would track every single individual, what their interests were, what they were working on, what industries their products were in. And then I would just look for opportunities to connect people in the DMs, be like, hey, Tom, you should connect with Stacy here because you're both working on this product. And so we don't do that in the Facebook community. I think that can feel a little too CRM but I think we just have so much pattern recognition, and really these people believed in us since day one. So we just know a lot of them at this point. So I think it just feels very natural.
Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the show, please leave us a review on iTunes to let us know what you think or what you'd like to hear more of. Now, let's get back to the interview. Makes sense. So I will now talk about the very beginning. I think you guys were mentioning how one of the keys to success early on was just getting the product spun up as fast as possible so that you can get out to customers and get that feedback right away. Talk to us about some of the things that give us an idea of what you mean by fast, and maybe even beyond that, what are some things that you find that maybe other entrepreneurs, specifically in the maybe food and beverage space, that get too stuck on, that you feel like they should kind of try to move along faster so they can get their product out to customers?
Yeah. So this is Kei-chan. On the product side, when we first started, the very first thing that we did, before we even sheeted our first thing of noodles, we literally wanted to see if people would be interested in buy this product. So I used to work at Facebook. I had a bunch of ad credits that they give for free. We spun up a fake website with a fake product, put a checkout flow, and we just put some ads on the website to see if, one, people would buy this, and two, if we could get someone to buy this that, at a very high price point, because we had no idea how much it would cost to make this product. And through that experiment, we ended up learning that, hey, there were actually a good number of people who were very interested in this product. And they were willing to pay. People actually put in their credit cards, checked out. We went to a few and we're like, hey, this doesn't exist yet. We're going to refund you. And some people said no, just hang on to it until the product launches. Consider it an early investment. And so, that was an example of us trying to move really fast and not getting too hung up on, trying to make this before we validated the first thing, which was does someone want to buy this? And then after that, we decided, okay, we know people want to buy this. Let's see if it's even possible to do this. And we literally went on YouTube, read a bunch of research reports on how to create a low carb, plant-based ramen. Kaylee and I had to Google translate Chinese and Japanese research reports and patents to see what existed out there, to see if it was even possible before we even started, trying to find a kitchen or trying to mass produce these things.
So when you were I think you had mentioned at one point that you were making your kitchen and just trying it out on maybe friends or on a street, trying to get people to try it out, and you're trying to nail down the product first. Maybe is that does this even taste good? Talk to us about that. At the very beginning of it all, when you're just trying to even figure out what are you selling. Talk to us about that kind of iteration phase.
Yeah. So when we first started off, Kaylee and I don't actually know how to cook. Well, we can cook eggs, but a lot of what we've learned culinary wise has come over the course of running IMI. And so the first thing was basically learning like, hey, what are the options that are out there in terms of making a product? And so that's how we landed on shirataki. It was the obvious like low carb noodle answer because it already exists in the market. And we asked ourselves like, could we make it better? We went down that route, got a lot of people to try it. It was like almost unanimous hatred towards the product.
I've tried those kind of noodles. Yeah, not a fan.
Yeah, it's definitely an acquired taste. So we just quickly crossed that out, and then we're like, okay, like that's not going to work. Like we got to make it a traditional style noodle that's like sheeted, cut, and then cooked. So we basically canvassed every single like low carb keto website to look at recipes that people make online to see what the list of ingredients we could play with were. And we ended up with a list of hundreds of different ingredients that were on the protein side, that were low carb, and then we had to find ingredients that would like bind everything together and hold everything together. And we literally just went through the spreadsheet and made permutations of every single ingredient, and we just like each bought like a stand mixer, and we just made noodles. And we did this for days, if not months, just testing every single permutation to see what would work until we finally landed on something that worked. We literally brute forced the problem.
I think I really want to get into the mindset at this stage where did you know that eventually you'd find something that worked, or like was there a point where you're thinking, you know what, we might not be able to figure this out ever?
I'd be lying if I say that didn't cross our minds, but at that point we had already quit our jobs and we're like, we're going to make this work. Like it has to be possible to make something work. And we always knew that there were versions of a product that were like, okay, that would work. But for us, it was kind of like seeking the next better option. And every experiment we ran, we found something that was slightly better than the last. And over time, our confidence just grew where we're like, okay, we know we have something to fall back on, but let's keep going. We think we can get a formulation and a recipe that will work even better.
That makes sense. And speaking of not kind of having a concession or not compromising, I want to talk a little about once you figured out what worked in your home kitchen, having to now bring this to a manufacturer, and you had some challenges early on with trying to find someone to now replicate the kitchen version that you had made. Talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, that was a very interesting experience. It's probably one of the major setbacks actually in the early days that we had at IMI. So we had this formulation that we loved, and we had never worked with a manufacturer before, so we had no idea whether or not it would work. We decided actually that we wanted to, if we wanted to produce a great ramen, we had to go to Asia because that's where like all the delicious ramen brands are. And we found a factory. We shipped a few $1,000s of our special flour blend that we had come up with in our own kitchen. And once it landed there, it actually got seized by customs in Taiwan for having an ingredient that they didn't recognize, but is allowable and popular in the United States. And they actually destroyed a couple $1,000s worth of merchandise.
Wow.
That we had. And
you had a manufacturer at this time that was willing to work with those ingredients?
Yeah. We had basically just picked up the phone and dialed a bunch of folks to see who would be willing to take a risk on a startup. And someone had agreed to do it. We had shipped them a small parcel, like a small box of the product, and they were able to make a small batch. And so we're like, okay, cool. Like let's send you guys like a big container worth. And that's what got seized.
Wow. So then what next? Like, how did you guys overcome that? That sounds like another obstacle where you're like, not that you'd give up, but like, that's pretty, yeah. It feels like bad luck.
That was definitely a very challenging moment. I remember Kaylee and I, we looked at each other like, what do we do now? And we were pretty stuck. And so we turned to a bunch of our advisors, folks who are really experienced with supply chains, albeit in different products. And they told us, like, don't go international. It's going to create a ton of problems and headaches. You're going to spend a ton of money. It's incredibly risky. And, they're right. Like, international supply chains are pretty hard, and they're much riskier. And we had experienced that firsthand. So we actually ended up pivoting to produce a different type of noodle, which is a lot less popular. And it's not the type of ramen you're familiar with that you grew up eating. And it's also not the ramen that we sell today. But we ended up manufacturing it locally. And that was the first product that we actually launched at the beginning of 2021. The product ended up being a lot less tasty and much more expensive to make. But needless to say, when we launched that product, in the spirit of getting to market fast and getting real feedback, the product wasn't a hit. People didn't like it, to be completely honest. And at that point, we had spent over like 6 figures in inventory, and we had spent nearly 8 months in lost time. And then we felt really stuck. We were like, oh God, what do we do now? Going back to like Kaylee's original point about our mission and playing by our own rules, like, we ended up deciding to like listen to our gut, and we wanted to go revisit Asia. And so we had to completely reformulate our product to meet Asian standards. And we wanted to take the risk, and we were like, the difficulty here is totally worth it for a much better product. And we ended up finding a great partner to help us manufacture our product. And it's what we're selling today. Customer reviews have gone up significantly. People are much happier with it. It's a lot more familiar. And, I think that entire experience just really enforces our internal mantra of playing by our own rules.
So this first, I guess, large batch that you had, you mentioned 6 figures in inventory, is not the version that you sell today. Like, what happened to that? Were you able to eventually sell it? You just had to toss it? If it wasn't sellable, like what happened?
It ended up being a combination of both. Kaylee, mad respect for Kaylee for figuring out ways to get rid of as much inventory as we could before we donated the rest.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be fair, we definitely had a contingent of folks who, were following like low carb keto lifestyles, who were just like hair on fire problem. They wanted a noodle and they liked the product a lot. And so we were able to find pockets of these customers.
Or like functionality was more important, like the taste.
Exactly. I mean, to them, they still actually enjoy the taste. And in fact, even today, now that we have this new version now, many of those customers still email us or message us saying like, hey, will you ever sell the existing product? So it's actually pretty shocking. It's pretty funny. There's always going to be customers out there. You just have to find the right pockets of folks.
That makes sense. So when you are kind of going at the speed where you're launching fast and just trying to just stay in the game, and maybe not the ideal path that you wanted or maybe you visualized, but just trying to stay in the game. How do you deal with this, maybe harrowing, or like this thought that, man, like maybe we're doing it wrong? Because again, it sounds like you're optimizing for speed over, because it sounds like at certain points in your story, you felt like you went with maybe what was speed, and you learned a lot and it was useful for your journey, but then you realize, okay, this is actually, we learn a lot to do it differently. So talk to us about like how you make decisions these days where you do still want to move fast as like, a startup, but also now, again, there's more on the line, probably more than 6 figures of inventory these days. Like, how do you balance the speed versus like, I wouldn't say, I don't have a better word than doing the right way, but like doing maybe more of the meticulous path?
So, Kei-chan, I'd love to chime in a little bit, actually. Well, definitely want to answer that latter part of your question. I think for myself, if I had to admit, like, I used to work with a coach. Kei-chan and I actually work with the same coach, but I had a lot of like deep insecurities and anxiety around this, which was like, I never knew if I was making the right decision. And I was like scared all the time because I was like, oh my God, startups are basically like uncertainty generating machines. And I'm always worried that like we're gonna like make a decision that's gonna kill the company somehow. And I think my coach, or our coach, to his credit, he used to be like a gamer, and me and Kei-chan are, of course, gamers. In games, there's something called fog of war, which is like when you first start on a map, you don't see the whole map, right? You see like the area right around you, right next to you, and then everything else is covered in fog. And then as you take a step in a certain direction, that fog of war then unveils a little bit further. And I think, our coach basically told me, he was just like, look, man, you and Kei-chan, you guys, have been close friends. You guys have worked together. You guys have certain skill sets, and you just have to trust that you're not going to know the answer. Like, you can't see all of the fog of war unveiled, but you have to trust that when you do unveil that next piece of fog of war, you'll know how to handle it, and you can to handle that next step together, because that's what startups are. You just you kind of see what happens, what the next problem is, and as long as you trust in your problem solving capabilities, you can figure out that next problem. So I think that actually relieved a lot of that anxiety personally for me, and I think Kei-chan is actually a much better strategic thinker. He plays 4D chess all the time. So I'll kind of let him answer more on the decision making side.
I think Kaylee's giving me too much credit, but I would say from my perspective, probably one of the most beneficial things in terms of being able to move and take risks while still kind of mitigating the downsides for us. Has really just been this partnership between Kaylee and I. Sometimes there's decisions. We always go about it. Oftentimes we discuss and debate, and we get into small arguments about what's the best way to proceed. But I think at the end of the day, we come out with a more multifaceted view, because I cover mostly product and ops. Kaylee drives sales and marketing. We both want what's best for the company, and we look at a decision and we're like, is this going to bankrupt us? If the answer is no, we just move forward. And, even if it's the wrong decision, I don't think either of us ever come from a place of judgment or blame. We don't ever look at each other and say oh, Kei-chan, you screwed this up. It's always okay, what is the learnings? And then how are we going to fix this? And that takes a huge burden off of the decision-making process for both of us. And even as we've grown bigger, our decision-making framework has always been the same. Put together a case, consult with each other, debate it. Is this going to end the business? If not, move forward and then figure out how to get to an answer faster. We just want to unveil as much of the fog of war as possible.
Yeah, I like this this idea of no judgment as you guys are making these decisions, and then also this idea of the fog of war, where I think as entrepreneurs or as humans, really, we have this need to control, right? We need to control. We just be able to see the end. What's the entire path? Take me from here to my end goal. But I think what you're getting at is that's great. That'd be great to have, but it's not realistic. It's not possible. It's impossible to be able to see everything to the end. But what you have to do instead, or what's maybe more relieving to do, is just trust that your future self can respond to the kind of ever growing fog of war as you advance in your journey.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I want to talk a bit about the website. So I really love the design of it. ImmiEats.com is the website. Again, we'll link to all of it and everything. Talk to us more about what went into building the website. Was it design in-house? Talk to us more about what went into building the website.
Yeah, we worked with a branding agency in the early days of building this brand. And I think most branding agencies will have the capability to do both the visual design as well as potentially do the website development. I think because Kei-chan and I came from the tech industry, we cared a lot about things like site speed and CRO. And so we wanted specialists. So we wanted, of course, the branding agency to do what they do best, which is more on the branding architecture and the visual design. But we also wanted to pair them with a dev agency that we knew could build, very fast, seamless websites that, again, were very CRO oriented. And so it ended up being a combination of the two, where the branding and design agency effectively took a first pass at scoping out the different sections of the website to ensure that it was still on brand. And then our dev agency then would be able to slightly push back here and there, basically just provide their insights around CRO. And we kind of came to this healthy combination, and that's what our website is today.
Yeah, the building of the website was actually relatively straightforward. I think where there was a lot more adventures and misadventures between Kaylee and I was the branding piece and just trying to figure out how do we like take what's in our collective brains and then relay that to our branding team who could then like manifest it into this like an actual design and website and colors and language and fonts, because Kaylee and I are not designers by trade. We've worked with designers in the past, but when it's like a consumer product versus just like tech UI, there was just like so much we hadn't taken into consideration. There are many nights where we would have like a late night call and we're just like, this doesn't seem right, but I don't know how to explain to the branding agency that we want something else that represents us and the ethos of IMI and what we want to convey. And so it was a lot of trial and error. And if you look at some of our early designs, like they're very, very different from what we have now. And I would say that was probably the most challenging piece, not having a designer on our team and having to like convey our thoughts to someone external.
And I'm assuming that over time you've made tweaks here and there. Have there been any changes or any experiments maybe that you run on the website that have had maybe surprising or unsurprising impacts? You mentioned very CRO focused. Anything specifically that has made a big difference?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference was adding a lot of these like celebrity testimonials, which is pretty obvious in hindsight. Luckily, I think in our previous round, we got to know a bunch of interesting people who, all basically just love the product. And you'll see some of those names on our website today, but we definitely noticed a pretty significant conversion rate jump as soon as we embedded a lot of these testimonials. And it's kind of natural. Social shopping is a big thing these days where people want to know that, whether through word of mouth or that there's people they follow that love the product. That will convince them to buy. So I think that was a big thing. We also we currently use like a new shopping cart experience that definitely tries to upsell and cross-sell directly within the cart. So pretty obvious stuff, but I think that's definitely helped on the AOV side too.
In these celebrity testimonials, how was this done? Was it just like sending it to them? Like what's involved in getting a testimonial from a celebrity and then being allowed to use it?
So I think it kind of depends on the individual. With someone like Sammy Udell, who's a celebrity private chef for like Jonas Brothers, like Priyanka Chopra, Ludacris, and more. It really started like it was just kind of blind luck. We knew someone who was just like, hey, I know this chef Sammy who cooks for a bunch of celebrities. She'd probably be interested in trying this because she cooks, healthy food for all our clients. And so we ended up shipping her some product. She sent us an email basically with that quote that she wrote. That was like, I've eaten a lot of ramen and like Amy is amazing. And so we just followed up with her and we kind of had this dialogue over email. We got on a Zoom call and basically became friends with her. Like now we text her all the time. She texts us. She's always like, oh my God, I just gave this to my dad or my grandpa, or like I talked to one of my clients about this. So it's not any different than the way we built our own private community. It's like, these are all individuals. They're just people too. It never has to be transactional and, you just be their friends.
Awesome. Any other, you mentioned the cross-selling, what apps did you use to do that? Or any other apps that you recommend others check out that you have used for your website?
Yeah, I think you'll probably hear a lot of the same names from other podcast guests, but definitely like Enquire post-purchase surveys has been huge for us, especially with attribution issues. We do a lot of different marketing experiments. For example, we run like paid TikTok campaigns, and a lot of times people just don't use discount codes there. So post-purchase helps a lot with more accurate attribution. Cart Hook, of course, for post-purchase offers, just to get that AOV boost. We use Dovetail, which is an affiliate / influencer management platform. Elevar is great for helping to bring your Facebook, IG kind of ads manager conversion attribution back up. We'll, of course, use Gorgeous for customer support, Klaviyo for email, Okendo for product reviews on the website. Definitely suggest Okendo over some of the other review providers due to pricing. On the analytics side, we definitely love like Source Medium as well as Nautilus Analytics, TaxJar for taxes, archive app to help you automatically store like UGC assets across social, and then Grow LTV for the cart, just to help you with cross-selling.
Awesome. Yeah, that definitely think some names in here that have not been mentioned on the podcast before. So I'm excited to check them out and for others to check out as well. So emmyeats.com is the website. And I'll leave you this last question. What would you, maybe both similar answer or different answers, what would you both say is the most important thing for you to focus on over the next year of the business to really get it to the next level?
Yeah, I would say on the product side, for us, it's about just creating more variety than the same 3 flavors. We plan to launch a bunch of other different ramen flavors, as well as different styles of noodles. But beyond that, for us, it's about, how do we tap into kind of like the fun foods we loved eating while growing up as Asian Americans, and then sharing more of that with the world.
Yeah, we're very product and community-led organizations. So I think a lot of K-Chan's efforts are going to be super critical for the next year.
Awesome. So thanks so much, Kaylee and K-Chan. Get emmyeats.com, IMMIEATS.com. Thank you so much for both coming on and sharing the story and your experience and advice.
Thank you so much for having us.
Appreciate it, Felix.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Shopify Masters, the e-commerce podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs powered by Shopify.